Okay, everybody, we're about to start, I think, just getting a few more people in from outside. So this is a very special event. In New York, there's a lot of like very polished events, like TED Talks. Everybody like prepares for weeks, and they're like super on point and ready to go. This is not an event like that. This is a different kind of event. This is more of a raw kind of journey into the unknown, into the darkness even. We're going to go a little bit dark. Because we know it's hovering, right? Like everybody, feels that right now. So let's embrace it. Let's go into it. Let's see where it wants to take us. So the genesis of this event was this man right here, Bob Eisenberg, who I guess about a year ago or something. It's been a while. You were like, look, I really feel like we need to do a event that acknowledges, how. Yeah, you want to speak in the no, you got a mic. Yeah.
The end of the world.
You're going to speak a little closer, like here.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. What about the end of the world?
Yes.
What about the end of the world for you, Bob?
Well, I mean, how do you define world? It could be the end of life on the planet. It could be the end of humanity.
Yeah.
There's various ways to define it. But any way you put it, like the way I see it,
Yeah.
we've been about 80-some generations since Christ.
Yeah, let me hold it for you. Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
We've been 80. Okay, I got it.
I can hold it for you if you want.
No. I'll do it, but then I'll. No, I'm kidding. And then another license Moses, about 120 generations. But of all these generations, we, in a sense, you might say, are fortunate enough to witness the probable demise of humanity. I'm not saying it's written in stone. The more you are aware of it, the more worse it seems to be getting. So isn't that strange? Of all the different possible, scenarios, we are the ones who will very likely, or maybe our children, our grandchildren at the latest, who will see, so to speak, the end of the world. And if it's not from climate, there's many other things.
Yeah, originally we were going to have a full roster of all the existential terrors awaiting humanity and just like go into each one, right?
Yeah,
Whether it's like nuclear war or like AI taking over.
Benjamin Netanyahu, no.
Infinitely stable dictatorships. That's a good one.
Yeah.
But we didn't get as organized as that.
I played ping pong with him once.
But I know, you were saying that one issue you have is that you feel that people, they're kind of too hopeful, too Pollyanna-ish.
Yeah, I mean, you're always hearing people say, well, I don't want to be a sad sack. I don't want to be opposed to this. But in the end, they are Pollyannish, and maybe we need a little more overt pessimism.
Overt pessimism.
Yeah.
I think, how do people feel about overt pessimism? Could be like a new movement or something, Did you want to, what else did you want to share about what inspired you to put this together?
Well, actually, I do believe that the number of wildfires on the West Coast, the number of floods elsewhere, the number of cholera-ridden floodwaters in India and Bangladesh, all of these are greater than they've ever been, and they seem to be getting worse, as strange as it sounds, by the week, or at the very least by the month. Washington Post, I normally don't like Washington Post, but they do a stellar job on reporting what's going on in this respect.
And we were also talking a little bit about the economic system, the deficit, and Karl Marx, and you got some issues there too.
Yeah, I got an issue with Karl. No, just kidding. No, Marx was obviously a great thinker. What I wanted to concentrate was his theory of crisis, which basically has to do with the theory of underconsumption, or overproduction of goods. And basically, and I'll just say this once, but the people at the top who manufacture and make profits are getting more and more in that direction, while the masses at the bottom are getting more and more, what's the word? Oh,
Smushed?
yeah, you want to say. Yeah.
That's just kind of built into the logic of the system right now.
Well, it has been.
Yeah.
But the government will do anything to keep this scenario from taking place. So, and also big corporations and small corporations, and all of us might have a 401k. I mean, none of us are completely clean.
Yeah, we're all feeding into this sort of exploitation
Yeah.
system.
And
We're good. We'll come back. We'll come back to it. Yeah. So yes, thank you, Bob, for putting this together. And it's exciting to be here with everybody. Look at this wonderful crowd. People are jubilant to talk about the doom and the grief and the pessimism. And so to launch us off, we have our musical interlude from Nathan Dufour.
Hi, everybody. How you feeling? Are you feeling doomed? If you're feeling doomed, let me hear you say, I'm feeling doomed. See, that's not everybody. So if you're not feeling doomed, let me hear you say, I'm not feeling doomed.
I'm not feeling doomed.
That's more robust. You know what I mean? The show is framed as a question. It's not a statement. We're going to be exploring this. How about if you're absolutely not sure if you're doomed or not? If you're absolutely not sure if you're doomed or not, let me hear you say, I'm absolutely not sure if I'm doomed or not.
Absolutely not sure.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's about as ambiguous as you feel, you know. Worst call and response possible. I'm going to get things started on a musical note. My name is Nathan. Everybody say hi, Nathan.
Hi, Nathan.
That was good. Bob, that was good. That was good. What are all of your names? Didn't hear it. We're doomed. Yeah, let's talk about this. I mean, the name of the show is Are We Doomed? But another way of examining all of this can be encapsulated, I think, in a question that I want to thematize in this song. Because let me put it this way, there's a lot of fucking shit going on. Would you agree about this? This is something we can agree on. There's a lot of fucking shit that's happening right now in the world. Do you agree? A bunch of fucking shit is underwater right now. You know what I mean? A lot of fucking shit is on fire right now. A lot of fucking shit is mixed up and upside down in terms of its economic structure and the access to the agency that we would have to make the things that are fucking on fire underwater not be on fire underwater. Do you agree about all this?
Yeah.
So, another way of asking the question that this show seeks to ask, instead of are we doomed, is the question, how the fuck does fucking shit work? Do you ever find yourself asking that question? How the fuck does fucking shit work? How the fuck do I get my podium to the middle of the stage? How the fuck do I orchestrate myself to begin this show? How the fuck does fucking shit work? And I think that that's a question that has multiple possible angles on it. It's a material question. How the fuck does fucking shit work? How do the material processes function that bring us to this stage ecologically, such that we're facing possible crisis and such that we're actually beginning to experience some of the experiential aspects of climate change? There's that question. But that question is also related to the question of why shit works in the first place. What is the meaning of being here in the first place? Now, typically we think now that latter question is a question for philosophy, right? You enter a philosophy 101 course, you ask yourself the meaning of life, or it's in the province of religion. And science, on the other hand, is a totally different province that describes mechanically how things operate. Do you understand this distinction that I'm making, these how questions versus these why questions? But originally in the context of ancient science and philosophy in various different civilizations, but I'm mostly thinking of the Western tradition because that's what I'm trained in, these questions were one question all at once. And I sometimes think that the fact that we have made them so divided, we have philosophical questions of value over here and mechanical, physical questions about physical systems over here, that very division is part of what's brought us to this precipice, or this feeling of a precipice, that we don't integrate our questions of value, of why we're here. What is this mystery of actually being here in this moment, baby? With our questions of how things work in the first place. Round of applause for Bella, everybody. So this is a song about that, and it's called How the Fuck Does Fucking Shit Work? You ever find yourself asking this question, how the fuck does fucking shit work? You're just living your life, you're just a baby, you know what I mean? Or you're about to turn 80, or you're just living your life and trying to do your thing, and you find yourself observing that a bunch of fucking shit is upside down in this world. But that question of what the fuck is going on is related to this question of how the fuck fucking shit works in the first place, and what is the fucking meaning of shit. And if we could perhaps reintegrate these questions and look at them all holistically, perhaps we could join the ranks of those who have asked from the dawn of time these important questions such as, are we doomed? And how the fuck does fucking shit work? People have been wondering how the fuck shit works since before there was fuck shit or any other words, the function of which were to give names to objects and find a latent order in the sprawling chaoticness. Aw shit, it's fire, it's bright at night, look, I don't know where it came from, but now I can cook. It's from a higher power, I'ma write that in a book, I'ma praise it for millennia. That's how long it took until it occurred to me that the person that I'm worshipping can't account for all the phenomena I'm observing quite perfectly. And I gazed at my fire and whatever was frying up, and I thought perhaps its flames were made of elemental fire stuff, and water's made of water stuff, and earth is made of earth stuff, and air is made of air, and I and all I've ever heard of are made from these two, being just some conglomerates of parts and wholes, particles of a bunch of other smaller shit. But how small shit get? Is it infinitely divisible? Or a big and small balanced by some kind of invisible power? Or is it random and at bottom inert? In short, how the fuck does fucking shit work? It was heard in the cave and the hut and the yurt. How the fuck does fucking shit work? Is this making sense so far? Plato thought the universe was a living organism, a unitary animal with spirit, form, and vision. He got it from Pythagoras, who got it from Egyptians, who got it from a mashup of observations and religions that sprawl into the vastness of history's distance. And if that just seems like an idiotic inference, it isn't. All I know is life. It is my principal condition. Life is all I am, and from it I am arisen. So why would I assume that other shit within the system at which I look and listen isn't in the same position? I grow, trees grow, our forms are rearranged, winds and oceans blow and flow as if with conscientious change. There's nothing that I know that doesn't sometimes do it. So all is soul and life, for all is rife with movement. It's a beautiful construction. It hits you like a bullet. But just because it's beautiful doesn't mean it isn't bullshit. Is it all a big soul or a bunch of frickin' dirt? How the fuck does fucking shit work? You feeling me on this? Now, it's interesting to think about, right? Some of the themes that we've been addressing are such as this. Is matter just matter? Is it just inert stuff that just follows mechanical processes? You know what I mean? Are we just stuff, and our consciousness is just an epiphenomenon, as it's called, just sort of an illusion that wafts up from matter? How many of you feel that way? Like there's no such thing as a soul per se, it's just matter doing matter things. Just by a show of hands. Wow, what a spiritual bunch you are. I told you they're not going to feel like we're doomed. How about all of you? What do you tend to lean toward the sort of materialist, metaphysical viewpoint? Okay, all right, round of applause. And how about you, Bella? How about, I keep saying fuck instead of, I'm so sorry. Don't say fuck. Unless you're being philosophical. On the other hand, there's a more panpsychistic view of reality. Have you ever heard of the term panpsychism? So we got materialism over on one side. Panpsychism is the notion that in matter, there's a sort of agency, there's a sentience, there's a feeling, there's another side of reality that exhibits that same sort of thing of consciousness, and perhaps it permeates all of reality, and that's another way of looking at things. And that was actually more common in the ancient world, but in early modern science, this began to be sort of eschewed and excised from the way that the sciences worked. And perhaps that's one of the things that have caused things to be fucked up. Newton supposed that a God that's all-knowing preconceived the world machine and then set the ball rolling, such that anyone who knows all of the relevant conditions within a physical system could make accurate predictions of all possible events. And so even without God, knowing what the fuck's what becomes an approachable job. Stats, past, and futures, and there's nothing actually mystic in this universe that's absolutely deterministic. But further observation of really, really tiny stuff suggested that conception still wasn't quite fine enough. For subatomic particles whose masses are mad small don't behave in accordance with the common sense facts at all. And we can make guesses about how they'll act later, but they seem to express a lot of random behavior. And if the parts that comprise things just kind of do whatever, then what the fuck holds all of the larger stuff together? And what makes it gather just so in its random fall? Is there some supernatural shit happening here after all? Quantum mechanical uncertainty, word, how the fuck does fucking shit work? There's only 10 more minutes, don't worry. Now what we have is intellectual unrest, the inevitable result of knowing Dick Bupkis, wondering not just what, but even if stuff is, and when we hear an answer, fearing to trust it. And we're back once more to our former condition, but with much less faith and with less fucks given, whether anyone can answer the old inquisition of what the fuck's happening and is anyone listening? And next to the question of what the nature of matter is the question of just what's at stake when we're asking it. Is the universe for our use or are we its tools? The answers are opaque and the askers are fools. Is Earth other than us, self-balancing steadily? Or is she our mother and we're fucking her edibly? And is it just in reference to us that she's precious? And which comes first, the physics or the ethics? I hope you didn't think I would tell you what the answer is. I'll probably forget that we were asking this after this. The fact is I'm alive. I live on Earth. I'ma figure out a way to make the fucking shit work. How the fuck does fucking shit work? 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 Everybody, how the fuck does fucking shit work? How the fuck does fucking shit, Bella? How the fuck does this fucking shit work? And are we doomed? Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Nathan, for that charming phenomenological investigation.
My pleasure.
So our next guest, non-musical, is Guy McPherson. So Guy, I think I learned about your work, I don't know, like 15 years ago, a long time ago. Guy has been the leading kind of like doomer climate scientist who, for a long time, you basically felt that it was like too late. And we're just sort of looking at the burnt out embers of a failed human project. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Guy, and he's going to let us have it in a way.
Yes, it was May.
Oh, you got to use the thing.
The thing. I think it was June 20th, 2012 that I concluded we were doomed to extinction in the near future. And by we, I mean Homo sapiens. And what that really means is all life on Earth, because as we go, so goes all life on Earth, for two reasons. One, there's something called aerosol masking that nobody in this room has ever heard of, even though there have been peer-reviewed papers written about it since 1929.
Hold on a second. Aerosol masking, I've heard of it.
Really? We have the most informed crowd I've ever spoken to.
I'm telling you, get ready.
So at the same time industrial activity produces those greenhouse gases we're all familiar with, it also produces these small particles that go up into the atmosphere and reflect incoming sunlight before it has a chance to strike the Earth, and therefore to let the greenhouse gases warm the Earth. So that's called the aerosol masking effect. And when we reduce industrial activity, those aerosols fall out of the atmosphere. Like 9/11, and the planet heats up very rapidly, very high, very rapidly. How quickly? Well, according to Professor James E. Hansen, the commonly considered the founder of climate science, within 5 days, all those particles fall out of the sky. So if we reduce or stop industrial activity for 5 days, the planet heats up by 133% over land, which is a lot, because we're already over 2C, above the 1750 baseline. So that's a huge number. And so I've been following this peer-reviewed work for a long time about climate change and how doomed are we. And every time I think there might be a solution to mitigate or to reduce the probability that we're all doomed, more peer-reviewed evidence emerges and convinces me otherwise. So I hate to be the bummer in the room, really, but it seems like that's my task. Do you want me to leave it there, or should I go on and on?
It's a bit unspecific, so I wanted to get into how are we all going to die? But actually, I also know that like a few years ago, you were saying that 2026 we were kaput, and here it looks like we're going to make it to 2026.
Yes, we almost certainly will make it to 2026,
Yeah.
and I made a mistake there. I quoted individuals instead of quoting the peer-reviewed evidence.
But is it like, so in my understanding, I can join you on the doom, I mean, I can go fully into the doom situation, would be like the methane eruption becomes uncontrolled, that leads to the warming, then the oceans warm, then the plankton stop reproducing, 60% of our oxygen is produced by the plankton, does then we all suffocate? Is that your best scenario for how we all die?
No. You know, lately I've been answering this question by telling people you got 3 minutes. You got 3 minutes. And with every breath, you get a reset. Live that way. Live now. But when are we all going to die? We aren't going to make it till 2030. Now, I'd say there's a 0% chance of that based on my reading of peer-reviewed literature. And I made a mistake in saying 2026 because I was quoting two renowned scientists, James Anderson at Harvard, atmospheric scientist at Harvard, who famously led the team that discovered the link between chlorofluorocarbons and the hole over the Antarctic, and Jennifer McKinnon at the University of California, San Diego. And they both said that we were going to lose Arctic sea ice by now, and we haven't. You'll know when we have.
And the problem with losing the Arctic sea ice is that reduces the albedo effect.
Yes.
So nothing's anymore reflecting. Like we could have painted all of the rooftops of all the cities white to sort of compensate for the loss of the albedo effect. But for whatever reason, we haven't done that. We've just been doing other things.
Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we've been doing.
Yeah.
Other things. Yeah. In this set of living arrangements, you're deemed successful if you do other things all the time. And so we've been doing other things.
But is that the main problem with the Arctic sea ice? Because I've also read that isn't necessarily catastrophic.
Oh, it's definitely catastrophic, again, based on the peer-reviewed literature. The first season we lose Arctic sea ice, we will experience an increase in temperature of 133% on land. That's kind of a big deal. We're already above 2°C, by the way, as governments of the world agreed in October of last year. So we're already at 2. What is 133% of that? That takes us to about 4.6, 4.7 degrees very rapidly. And the most important phenomenon with which almost nobody is familiar except ecologists is the rate of environmental change. It's the rate of environmental change that dictates the continued survival of populations, communities, and species. So if we change the environment too rapidly for us to evolve through natural selection, or any other species to evolve through natural selection, then those species go extinct. And that's what happens when we have an ice-free Arctic Ocean. We'll see an abrupt warming, more abrupt than anything we've seen on this planet, for at least the last 70,000 years.
So there's no time even for like the microplastics to kill us or anything like that. It's going to be
it's interesting because every day I come across new material. I generally read it, and it convinces me that I was wrong, that it's not going to be climate change. It's going to be fill in the blank. It's microplastics. Did you know that most beaches in the world have more plastic than they do sand? And it's not even close. The sand is disappearing. Microplastics are doing great. And so there's so many things that could drive us to extinction, but I still think that climate change is in the lead on this one.
There's like the insect apocalypse. I'm just like feeding you kind of like zingers, like, you know.
Yes, the insect apocalypse is already underway, and contrary to what most people believe, it's the little things that actually matter. And the little things include those pollinators that ensure that we have food and that decompose organic matter so that we can continue to have food because we continue to have soil. So the insect apocalypse is problematic, and so are about 10,000 other things. I've been roped into talking about climate change because for some reason I started talking about that first. So it could be almost anything. You know, when I'm on the rare occasion I'm falling asleep at night, it occurs to me that today I've thought of 147 other reasons we're going extinct by the day after tomorrow. I don't sleep well.
So okay, but I guess like, in a way I'm always up for kind of going through different thought experiments. So let's say we are all kind of like doomed by 2030, then what you recommend that people do, so we shouldn't bother to conserve or to like fight for what's left or do anything. So we just
Listen.
like burn it out, or like what's the deal?
Listen, while you and I are conserving, while the people are conserving in our use of fossil fuels, the billionaires are doing the opposite. They're maintaining aerosol masking. I have a friend I haven't met yet who is
Those are often the best kind.
Oh, you telling me. And she's the personal assistant of a billionaire, and every time he takes his private jet somewhere, he takes 2 private jets. He sends one out in front of the jet he's on, a couple hundred miles, to detect any turbulence. Because he doesn't want to have his plane drive through the turbulence. That would be upsetting. So we got the billionaires maintaining aerosol masking, with the rest of us conserving natural resources.
So if we're all going to die in 2030, we should at least guillotine the billionaires first.
Took the words right out of my mouth. But there are things we can do. We can treat each other with respect and with love. We can act as if we matter. We can act as if our families and friends matter.
As if.
No, we really can't. I'm positing it as an experimental kind of approach, which it is for most people. And in our communities, we can go to the town meetings, and every civilization so far is characterized by misogyny and racism. Every single one, including this one. We can go to our town meetings, we can go to our city meetings, and we can try to overcome those challenges. Yeah, they're going to be difficult, but what else are you going to do with the few years you have left? Try to make the world a better place. And then the most important thing we can do is safely decommission the nuclear power plants, because when they melt down, we don't know how many of them have to melt down. And this was shown in the 2021 film Finch. If you haven't seen it, I strongly recommend it. It was subtly displayed when those nuclear power plants melt down, they strip away stratospheric ozone and superheat the planet way faster than any organism could ever possibly keep up. So we melt down some nuclear power plants, we're done. We're taking everything on Earth with us.
It's a different.
You mean the asteroid that drove the dinosaurs to extinction, the asteroid that struck the Yucatan Peninsula? Yeah, we didn't have nuclear power plants then.
Well, let's. I want to turn it over to Vicki, but I want to. I think we owe Guy a round of applause for holding the doom, for holding the negativity.
Thank you.
Doug asked you a brilliant question before we came up here, which is like, how do you metabolize all of this doom and this darkness? Like, what's your psychological kind of like mechanism for that?
Well, the most intelligent thing I did in my life was when I was 19 years old, and I had taken a couple of biology courses in college, and I realized that I would not have any children.
Yeah.
And I was for more than 35 years, I was with a Midwestern Catholic, the youngest of 6 children, and I managed to not have children. And that's amazing.
It was like the pull-out method? Or?
Because, if you think we're fucked, imagine bringing children into that situation. They didn't even get to vote, right? They just pop out of the womb, hey, what's going on? And the first thing you tell them, you're doomed, right?
That's not a good entry point.
No.
All right, Guy. Well, thank you so much for sharing your research and your deep thinking.
Oh, and by the way, if you want to check the validity of anything that I say, go to guymcpherson.com, guymcpherson.com, and type in the search box whatever you want to learn about.
Nature Bats Last, is that what it's called?
Yes, Nature Bats Last is at guymcpherson.com.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I can't promise that everybody is going to be as doom-laden and dark as Guy McPherson, but we do have some other contestants tonight, and we have Vicki Robbins, who you had a podcast.
What could possibly go right?
What could possibly go right? Yeah, and you wrote a book about monetary systems.
Yeah, your money or your life.
Your money or your life. And recently, your focus is aging, kind of like
Right.
a podcast or a blog.
I have a blog called Coming of Aging.
Yeah. And yeah, we're very happy to have you here. And yeah, I know you want to share some thoughts with us.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, how do you follow an act like that? It's like, okay, everybody, refreshments. I'll just offer some of my own ground of being. In 1989, I found out about overshoot and collapse. I found that all species that do not have natural predators will naturally eat through the entire food supply, and the whole colony will expand and collapse. And that is what's happening with the human presence on planet Earth. So that was like, and I'm the sort of person who thinks, well, maybe we can do something about that. And so I've done a series of things over the years, trying to put my finger in the dike, hold back the harm, etc., with the belief that, prediction is not, prophecy. Prediction is not, reality. There's something we can do. So I've gone through many, many initiatives trying to slow down the process, and most recently, in the last, whatever it is, 10, 15 years, I'm very dedicated to relocalization. I live on an island in the Pacific Northwest, and we're working in a lot of different ways on the idea of local self-sufficiency. And it's a diverse island, and I wrote a book about local food called Blessing the Hands That Feed Us, about relocalizing our food system. So we're tending to water, even though peripheral chlorides are throughout our entire water system. Anyway, so I've been addressing this. There's a graph that came out just about 1992 that showed that we'd gone into overshoot in 1986. And I looked at that graph and I said, holy shit. And that's what inspired me to keep going. I didn't understand why business as usual was just continuing to go on, that people were analyzing the situation, but there weren't activists out there literally trying to stop the train. So that's just one piece that I'll lay down. I do agree that we're going into an extremely unpredictable time, and my belief has been, without scientific evidence per se, that small pockets of human communities will actually persist. I think that people will move north, and maybe they'll be the ultimate event, but and so that the human population will be diminished vastly. The natural world, the speciation will be diminished vastly, but we've come back. Life itself has come back again and again. A man named Sir John Glubb has documented that there's been he documented 24 civilizations that have risen and fallen over time. So our civilization is in end time. So one way you could ask, are we doomed? It's that our civilization as it is doomed. And so, but that doesn't mean that we are doomed. It means that there is this huge thing that's toppling, and there are people who are trying to understand how to be not even more self-sufficient, but really to reform communities for survival. So that's another way to look at it. It's very normal, natural for civilizations to go into decline and end. So then what do we do? I think one of the pieces of evidence of end times is that there's always the story of the splitting of the worlds. There's the splitting, it's the rapture. There are those who will go into the rapture. There's the splitting of the technosphere and the ecosphere. There's a separation of the technological civilization. It's throughout literature, future fiction, that these worlds separate. And I think that that's what we're seeing also now. So I'm betting on the ecological sphere. That's really where I'm putting my marbles. I'm just saying these things to realize that entertaining the question is important. Yes, we are doomed. But that doesn't mean everything's doomed all at once, despite what Guy says. Maybe he's right, maybe he's wrong, who knows. It means that it's a complex system in adaptation. And because it's a complex system in adaptation, being able to ask the question, are we doomed, is actually pro-survival. It's not just personal survival. Where I'm banking is on the level of community. That's not just, like a little village that I live in, but it's the island I live on, and it means all the natural systems. And so becoming an ecological being, exiting the technological being and becoming an ecological being, and that is actually a possible process. So the other thing, because we've talked...
Is it possible in big cities, or do people have to relocate to smaller areas?
I think, I'm not living in a big city, that's all I can say. No, I don't think big cities are feasible. I mean, New York completely depends on, trucks coming in from elsewhere. Completely depends. And if there is a collapse, then rural people are not going to want to, send their vegetables here. No joke. I mean, you should just walk around New York and realize this is a completely untenable place. Not that it's bad, it's where we live, but it's untenable.
And when you say, because I guess you're saying collapse of civilization, how many people here do feel that we're headed for a collapse of civilization, just out of curiosity? Okay. And so that has so many layers to it or dimensions to it, right? It could be like a sudden, suddenly there's no food in the supermarkets and everybody's running for the hills. Or are you thinking more of a decline, or you don't even know? It's just the collapse is inevitable if it's 10 years, 50 years.
It's already happening.
Yeah.
The people in the rest of the world are already in collapse. It's ill distributed.
Yeah.
Collapse is ill distributed, and those of us who are privileged are still hanging on to the illusion.
Yeah. I have an experience because I live on 7th Street and Avenue B in New York, and
that's okay.
No, but there's a center for processing asylum seekers from Africa and Venezuela, and a lot of these guys are lining up every day. They're from the Ivory Coast. I was like, what's going on in the Ivory Coast? It turns out that's 50% of the world's chocolate is grown there, and Nestle's and Hershey's are the biggest companies who are corrupted the government. And I was like, how much does the average chocolate farmer make? Anybody want to guess how much in Ivory Coast? What's that? It's 78 cents a day, and the country is 80% deforested, and so what's happening in all these countries is our Western corporations have, corrupted, exploited to the max, and now these countries are breaking down. So these people are just moving north, their whole family will pull together, get somebody one flight to Brazil or Colombia, then they'll just walk north to the Mexican border and see if they can find a way across the border. And because if they can make $15 under the table here, as doing whatever, that's they can support their whole family back there. So, yeah, so I totally agree with you. For us in the first world, the collapse is still marginal enough that we can sort of avoid looking at it. I'm actually very glad that I see this on my corner because it just brings the presence of it. I visited Ibiza. I have all friends who are living in this Mediterranean paradise in Ibiza, and they're flowy clothes and local, regenerative farming and so on. And but there's really not much water in Ibiza, and all these islands are already keeping out all the refugees from Syria and the Middle East who don't have a place to go. So it's almost reminds me a little bit of that Edgar Allan Poe story, The Mask of the Red Death, where the prince creates the pleasure palace, and then they hang out there, and then finally the plague enters the palace and everybody dies. So yeah, it's just not kind of it's a good story, but there is a sense of where the first world is still very much trying to keep the reality of what's happening to the hidden or the peripheries or the margins, and the wealthier you are, the easier that it is to do at this point.
Yeah, I think that when civilizations collapse, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. The people who are most dependent on the systems persisting will be the ones that are most upset, to say the least. But what I'm banking on, and it's maybe stupid and ridiculous, but I'm banking on my small little networks of, the farming community and people who are preserving the forest and people who are preserving the water and people who are gathering mushrooms. And it's small, but it's a crystal, if you will. It's a crystal on which other crystals can grow. And in a way, I'm not trying to provide hope, but this is actionable. One other thing I want to say in this topic, and then I'll stop talking, is this current inquiry into aging that I do on my blog called Coming of Aging. I'm in my 80th year, so clearly it's an issue that I should be, looking at. And I've gone through not all of them, and there's plenty left, but I'm going through many egoic losses of like importance and visibility, the things, the sense of self, the self that I built in order to live in the world is starting to disassemble while I'm still in this body. And so the question is, what is this period of time for? Because, I was thinking about Ernest Becker, about the fear of death. His whole study was, the sort of the back pressure of the fear of death is just completely shaping our lives. And it may be that that's what we're seeing, in this collapse, this fear of the collapse of civilization, the collective death. It's like, what is this about? And I'm finding it's a refinement of the soul. It's just an incredible period of time of transformation, inner transformation. And I'm not the only one. More and more I talk to older people. This is a process that's happening if you allow it. So I think that's also another actionable perspective.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Vicki Robbins. And next we have the esteemed Doug Henwood.
Esteemed. Thank you. I want to apologize. I'm a neurotic, so I have a prepared text. I apologize, however, that it's not peer-reviewed.
Doug, just a second, a little bit about yourself, your background. You do a blog about sort of economic systems.
I've been writing about economics and politics for many, many, many years. I do a radio show on economics and politics. I am now studying the American ruling class as a rotting social formation. Which is a rich topic for investigation. So as I say, I have a prepared text. It's not too painfully long, I hope. My first thought on seeing the title of this event was to paraphrase Bill Clinton. Depends upon what your meaning of we is. And the second was of a story about Herman Melville's last meeting with Nathaniel Hawthorne. As Hawthorne recounted it, Herman Melville came to see me at the consulate, looking much as he used to, a little paler, perhaps a little sadder, in a rough outside coat, and with his characteristic gravity and reserve of manner. Melville, as he often does, began to reason of providence and futility, and of everything that lies beyond human ken, and informed me that he had pretty much made up his mind to be annihilated. And sometimes it seems to me like a lot of us are echoing Melville. It's not just my gloomy left-wing intellectual milieu, although I was unprepared for precisely how much gloom I was going to be marinating right here. The other day, Facebook presented me with an ad for an article from Car and Driver magazine published in March 2020, a week or two into the pandemic, listing the 13 best vehicles for tackling the apocalypse. Among them, the Ford Police Interceptor Utility Hybrid, the Jeep Gladiator Rubicon, and the Ariel Nomad Tactical. On the right, and some of the politically detached mainstream, apocalypticism leads to stocking up on guns and canned food. On the left, where I lead my political life, it often leads to a disarming resignation. That was brought home to me back in 2019, before the pandemic damaged human society, when I was doing an article on DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, of which I am a member. I interviewed a young member, the one, in fact, who drew me in, and I asked her what she thought the organization should be doing in 10 years. She said, I don't really think there's a long term. I was stunned and haven't stopped thinking about that since. Young people are supposed to be full of hope, but polling data and interviews with psychoanalysts have shown me that these are fairly widespread views, especially among those who lean left. And then there's that rhetorical style, much but not all of it on social media, that only breeds despair. This is the endless recitation of horrors. With climate, it's alarming bits like another melting glacier or the 13th consecutive month of record heat. But it's not just climate. My Twitter feed, and I still can't say X, is full of horrible images out of Gaza, which are undeniably horrible. But what do these recitations accomplish? Do the spreaders of this sort of thing think that with one more picture of a blown apart toddler you could end the horror, or with one more tale of catastrophic methane releases? What is the theory of change here? Outside a small circle of connoisseurs, cataloging horrors is more numbing than mobilizing. On seeing these, even I, who might otherwise be the ideal target audience, want to escape into pictures of beautiful food on Instagram. Or there could even be the perverse reaction nicely described by A.R. Emmons in his book-length poem Sphere. When one knows he's going out, when one knows he's going out, can we blame him for shoving the voltage up? I'm kind of skeptical that knowing that we're all doomed by 2030 is going to encourage us to be nice to each other. I think it's more likely to encourage the war of each against all. 12 years ago, I wrote...
He's been wrong before, though. He thought we were out by 2026.
Yes,
and that's,
so we got 4 more years. I'm grateful for the reprieve. A whole nother presidential election to go through. 12 years ago, I wrote the introduction to a collection of essays edited by my friend Sasha Lilly called Catastrophism, the Apocalyptic Politics of Collapse and Rebirth. The title of my contribution was Dystopia is for Losers, which makes me sound Trumpy before the fact, but I'm not now, nor was I ever. I meant that embracing doom was profoundly alienating and demobilizing and guaranteed defeat. If I were so inclined, I might psychoanalyze the embrace of an eroticization of doom, perhaps as defensive strategy against despair, but not to kink shame or anything. This seems a fixation that should be worked through. Let's muse on one of the more famous exhortations in political history. Workers of the world, unite. You have nothing to lose but your chains, rather. Change. I could psychoanalyze that one for a long time, but I won't. It sounds quaint, almost embarrassing. It draws on structures of feeling that are looking very withered today. The notion of a broad solidarity and a sense that once mobilized, the united force could transform the world into a better place. We lack that ambition. If you think we won't be around in 10 years, you aren't even going to imagine what a better society might look like. It's distressing to see the right so mobilized and ambitious. Page through the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025, their blueprint for Trump 2, and you'll see a detailed and terrifying plan for transforming every aspect of American life. They're going to bring Jesus into the Department of Labor and drive woke out of the Federal Reserve. I'm not kidding about those things. They really plan that. We've got nothing approaching that. Despite constant harassment and repression, the political left was once profoundly optimistic and ambitious. We lost that, partly because the collapse of the USSR discredited any notion of remaking the world. We couldn't imagine that because it would inevitably lead to the gulag. Instead, we should keep to the small and the local and somehow reconstruct what was lost and not more. The historian Steve Fraser has a piece in Jacobin magazine a while back arguing that we've lost all sense of the future. On the right, we're all about going back to 1955 to make America great again, and much of the Bernie Sanders left is back to 1935 to rehabilitate the New Deal. There was much that was great about the New Deal, but it derived lots of its political energy from trying to domesticate socialist ambitions. Without those, we can't have a New Deal, green or otherwise. To close, I'm going to quote the conclusion of my 2012 intro on catastrophism because I couldn't improve on it now. Wouldn't it be better to spin narratives of how humans are marvelously resourceful creatures who could do a lot better with the intellectual, social, and material resources we have? That new collectivities could imagine together a world better than the capitalist mess we've inherited? As someone who finds the temptation of pessimism too alluring, and that's true, even though I haven't sounded that way so far, I keep reminding myself that recovering a utopian sensibility is about the most practical thing we could do right now. Dystopia is for losers. Are we doomed? Not if we can help it.
Very nice. Very, very erudite. I liked your the Melville Hawthorne moment.
And A.R. Emmons, I got them all in there.
You got them all in there. So I mean, although you tend pessimistic, but right now you're feeling there's a little bit of utopia and kind of frisson kind of going on.
Well, I just don't think we have an alternative. I'm not really willing to resign myself to human extinction. We're very resourceful, and obviously it's a steep hill to climb. But I do think that if we do get convinced that we're doomed within 6 years, we're going to be very mean to each other, and society's going to get even more brutal than it is, and that doesn't seem like a way to spend our final days. And that Ammons quote too. We're just going to shove up the voltage and bring the doom moment forward. So I don't know. There's this great quote from Keynes, which I wish I could recite about the famous animal spirits passage of the General Theory, where he says that humans never really did anything in the rational evaluation of possibilities. We have the only way we do things is just with some irrational striving to improve things in the future. And maybe I'm quite consciously selling a bill of goods here, but I guess despite a tendency, I read a whole lot of Freud. I'm given to somewhat gloomy Central European worldviews of things. But on the other hand, I don't know. I just think that we've got to do the best we can and try to pull our asses out of the fire.
Nice one. Yeah, I think it'll be fun. So I think what we'll do, Doug is going to speak. Hi, Doug. And then
It's rare that there are two Dougs. In this
maybe we'll have a
industry.
little bit of like a back and forth. Then we're going to take a break, have a drink. Martinis are available, whatever you need. And then we'll come back. But I thought we could also maybe talk when we come back a little bit about let's admit that we're in this time of collapse. We don't know if everything is going down or if civilization is going down. What is like in a way like that? Could that be a beautiful time? Like, could we actually take from that an opportunity to, I don't know, like forge some amazing thing out of like the human spirit, yada yada. I don't know. Let's at least think about that. I was in England last week at a festival, and this guy Satish Kumar spoke. Do you guys know him? And he was so wonderful, and he was just like, I think his talk was called Walk the Talk, and he talked about how when he was young he just decided to walk around the world. So he had no money. He started in New Delhi, just like step by step. He said in 2.5 years he found himself in Washington D.C. And like he just people took care of him, and basically his whole thing was just love. Like he would go to a Christian country, he'd meet a Christian. He's like, I love you. You're Christian, great. Muslim, I love you. You're Muslim, great. So like, yeah, maybe this type of situation, could force us to access our inner leadership capacities, and even if things are going down or out or flaming up, it could be the most amazing time to be alive. So it's just something to think about. But Doug, what are your thoughts for us tonight?
Well, I'll just agree with that. So yeah, if you don't know me, I'm Douglas. I write books mostly. The most recent book I did was called Survival of the Richest, Escape Fantasies of the Tech Billionaires, which was about their fantasies of either escaping the doom or saving us all with a big moonshot techno project. So what I'm reminded of in hearing everyone talk is a couple of years ago, I ended up being the guy who was alone with my mother-in-law in the hospital room as she died. And I was at first thinking, why the fuck am I the one in the room at 3 a.m. with my mother-in-law when she's got 3 kids, and I'm the one. I did this for my mom. I did this for my dad. I did this for my best friend when I was 25 years old as he died in a car next to me. Why am I here with this dying person? And over the next hour, as she kind of fought for breath, but was actually, I think, fighting to not breathe, if you know what I mean, fighting to let go, I felt connected with her on a mycelial level, if you know what I mean. It was as if I was tripping on 10 grams of acid and in the same body as this person, metabolizing with her the letting go of life. And I realized this was the most profound mitzvah a human being could be blessed with. And by mitzvah, it's funny, mitzvah means like a commandment, but it also means like a privilege and a blessing at the same time. It's that. And it's not what I was going to talk about. But I've often wondered, is my work here to help us fix the problem, or am I giving palliative care? As if they're two different things, right? But what if they're one and the same? You know, what if they're one and the same? You know, I agree. I'm a recovering Marxist. I agree. Conditions on the ground, the data, the stats indicate we are doomed. right? The machines say she is dying. The breath is stopping. This is ending, right? This, boom. But there's a difference between attending to the probable and opening ourselves to the possible. You know, in an age of AI, which is what we're living in, right? The age of artificial intelligence is the age of probability. That's all AI does, is it finds the most probable response, the most probable, the average. It creates the mean for you, whatever you put in. And if they want to make it look more human, they just randomize a little something about it to make it look noisy like human. But as we converge on the probable, I feel like the human offering is the possible, is the wiggle room, is the liminal space, is that other thing. And I believe in science, but I believe in science as being so incomplete. They just discovered the fucking gut biome, and that's bigger than the gut, right? They just are realizing that our connective tissue is an organ, right? The connective tissue in your body. They thought that trees competed for sunlight in the forest, but they actually are sharing nutrients under the soil. You know, we do not know what the fuck is going on here, right? We really don't. And I'm holding out hope on magic. I really am, on magic. On that we can collectively undergo the same mind shift that I had with my dying mother-in-law, where the horror was the blessing. And whether that just means changing our experience of our collective extinction or changing the fact of our collective extinction. Who knows what it is? That we go quantum, that we rise from the chrysalis of matter as pure consciousness, as Terence McKenna argued we could, that we connect on some other level, that matter, as Rupert Sheldrake would tell us, that the laws of physics are themselves evolving along with us, along with consciousness. I want to go there. And, you know, whenever I talk like this, someone says, it's like, well, not whenever, 2 times when I've spoken like this, someone said, oh, you sound like you're just playing in the band on the deck of the Titanic as it goes down. What better life could how much more true to a sense of purpose if you are a musician than to sit in that chair as the boat goes down and play for the people. It's like a great Jewish prayer in medieval times, and the Jews had a lot of fucked up, sucky times. Medieval times were some of the worst. They wrote this prayer called the Unatana Tokef. It's what they read on like Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. It's the worst one of all. It's like, between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur it is written, who will live and who will die? Who will be sick and who will this? Who will this? It's like the book of life, and everyone, you're supposed to think, oh, right, it's because we got to be really good now because God's writing it down. No, what it says at the end of the poem is, this is all going to be written in the book of life, but with compassion and grace and mutual aid, we can lessen the severity of the decree, right? So we may not be able to change the facts on the ground, conditions on the ground, not easily anyway, but we can change the human experience of these conditions, and in the process, perhaps flip the script and discover, an entirely different human stories at play.
So Nathan, as our youngest representative up here, how does all this strike you? You said you're not feeling the doom.
Well, I'm feeling a little bit more now. No, I'm not. I'm joking. I agree with you. I agree with you, Douglas. It would be absurd for me to try to act as an avatar for younger people and represent, a diversity of views and things like that. And I'm 37. I'm not as young as some people are. Not as young as Bella. Bella's very young. Bella is the youngest person here. But I did a show the other day where I do, some of the same material that you saw tonight and things like it, and teaching like this sort of interactive eco-philosophy course. And I usually do it with other adults, but I did it with some high schoolers at like a sort of summer camp kind of context not too long ago. And they were articulating a viewpoint, not across the board, but quite saliently, that was similar to what Douglas is expressing. A sense of almost certainty that things as we know them are collapsing, that they're going to collapse. These were gifted students who were involved in this program because they've devoted their lives to various forms of research and creative pursuit of intellectual goals and gifts of various kinds. And I was talking to this girl who works in AI, and she was like, it's definitely going to take over in the sense that you're asking, because I was asking her about this. But she also had this sort of strange, and to me at first moment paradoxical, but then in a way that resolved sort of response in addition to that, which was that that's okay, that something is shifting and changing, and the existing systems are shifting and changing, but life itself, if what we mean by life is the self-organizing tendency of matter itself, is going to persist. That's not how she put it. She's 16, but she is very bright. But that's what I took from it, a sense of, yes, what you have perhaps attributed your meaning to is collapsing. That is ending. We feel sure of that. Young people seem to feel sure of that, at least the ones that I've talked to. But we're alongside that shift, there is a shift into what some call the post-secular, beyond this notion of a mechanical universe where life is the exception, and a more integrated notion of what the operations of the universe entail in the first place. And perhaps, yes, the very laws of physics are changing in the cosmic evolution. But one way or another, the story of agency, the story of matter organizing itself persists. And I think if you're younger, whether or not people would articulate it that way, there is a sense, and I do have the sense, that that's why it's okay. The adventure continues, and it's invitational in that sense, and it's kind of fucking fun. In the same way that maybe it was fun, like imagine, Christianity emerges as the Roman Empire starts to dismantle itself, and there's hundreds of years of Christian evolution, but the early Christians were living with almost a sense of certainty that the apocalypse was imminent, and it was a good thing. Revelation was a process that was nearing completion, and therefore be activated constantly to live in that now, and within the confines of your immediate sphere of agency, build the kingdom here. So you're so assured of the imminence of total clearing of the slate that you actually create the ideal reality that would have been impossible under the strictures of the existing structures. And I'm not saying every young AI savant is converting to a new form of early Christianity involving a post-secular leap into the self-awareness of matter. But I am saying that, though.
Okay, so this is what I'm feeling about our situation right now. Maybe instead of taking a break and coming back, I think the energy is still good. People still seem like on point. So maybe we'll take a question and then we'll all try to answer it in whatever way. Somebody have a burning thought? Yeah, over there. Somebody has a mic for you coming right up. Yeah, in the blue shirt right there behind the pole. Yeah, and then we'll see how long we want to go. Then we'll go and have more drinks and martinis and all that stuff. Yeah, go ahead.
This question is for Professor Rushkoff. So
it's going to be for all of us. We're all going.
Oh, for everybody.
We're all gonna,
okay, cool.
Take a
So we're talking about billionaires, right, and power. And one of the things that Professor Rushkoff brought up in a Medium
you can call him
piece-
Doug, I think, right now.
Doug? Cool. That he was invited to talk to a group of billionaires, and they wanted to ask him, when it came to the future, they didn't want to talk about how to save humanity, how to prolong life, basically about when the systems start to collapse, how do we prevent the security people from turning on us, right? Basically, there are people that we can afford to pay to protect us.
Yeah.
But what do we do when they turn on us?
People read Douglas's piece on this, so it was widely circulated and got a lot of attention, actually. That's a great question. Go ahead. Yeah,
Well, sorry. So one of the things that occurred to me, and so this is the basic question, is are our perceptions totally flipped, right? Does that possibly reveal that the billionaires realize they have no power? The people who have the power are the security people. The people that have the power are the people that they hire. The same way in our society, the people who clean your hotel rooms, the people who grow your food, the people who tend to the highways. They're the ones with the power and not the people with all the money. So the question is, are our perceptions flipped? And that's why this power system exists, because we're applying power
I like
in
it.
the wrong
I
place.
like it. Vic, you look like you're ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, this is a bit what I was saying, is that there are many people, many communities now low to the ground that are already creating systems that are pro-life, pro-living systems. And it's not just technology, it's communication, it's love, it's like conflict resolution, it's circles, where we think about things together. All of that technology is happening low to the ground. And it's invisible because of perception of power. But it's there. So maybe it's that as the big crashes happen, I don't know. I mean, it's not strategic, but I'm just saying that for me, being woven, it's like Douglas is saying, I'm part of the mycelium. We're growing a mycelium down there, close to the ground. We're growing those connections. And I want to say really that it's not an individual transcendence process. It's the process of the realization that there is no you without us. And us isn't just these people. Us is the microbes and the roots and there's an us out there that is functioning. Now, Guy puts a marker way out there, like that there will be no us, so don't worry about it, or like just be a good person until we go in 2030. What I'm positing is that we can become part of the ecology rather than part of the civilization, or we can make that journey. And part of the journey is realizing that we're all in this together. Part of the journey is the tolerance for relationships with people that you don't see eye to eye. Part of the journey is almost like the BO of humanity, and you finally get used to that. You see, it's earthy. Yeah, so anyway, that's my perspective on it.
That was beautiful. Thank you.
I mean, often I think civilization is really just the process through which older, weaker monkeys prevent younger, stronger ones from killing them and taking their stuff, right? Until the young ones are finally old enough to then need the civilization themselves, right? The billionaires understood that much, I think. And the place where I would flip the script on the billionaires, especially the tech billionaires, is we perceive of them as bringing revolutionary new things to us. But the tech billionaire mindset is actually reactionary. The devices and technologies and platforms they've created are there to maintain the existing order, right? They might disrupt the taxi vertical, but they run to Goldman Sachs for their IPO, just like Grandpa did, right? So it's ultimately it's reactionary. It's about keeping the certain kind of power in place. But you're right; they feel ultimately powerless to influence the future, right? The future to them is not a verb. It's not something we create in the present. The future is a thing that you hire a futurist to tell you what is inevitably happening given conditions on the ground so that they can prepare for that, right? So the shock to me was that the most powerful men I had ever been in a room with felt less powerful than I do to influence what's going to happen. That the best they can do is, hang on for the inevitable effect of the causes that they themselves have created.
I have a question for you and these people. Do they think their money is going to be worth anything post-apocalypse?
Well, that was what I had to tell them. I mean, they were stupid, right? These were like 14-year-old Walking Dead audience.
Elon Musk has made this very apparent to the world now.
Yeah, no, they really were. I mean, the event, it sounds like I was invited to speak to billionaires. I wasn't. It was a hedge fund holding like a reward conference for their biggest clients out in the desert. You invite like 100 people, and then there was like a menu of people that they could see. So it was like, improve your golf swing with this pro, learn to cook an omelet with emerald, or this or that. And then there was, at 1 o'clock, it's like, find out about the future with futurist Douglas Rushkoff. And I'm not a futurist, I'm a presentist, right? Who knows what's going to happen? I would never say. So it was that. It was 5 guys show up, it's like, oh, so, Bitcoin, Ethereum, or virtual reality, or Web3. And then one guy's, like, what about my bunker? Is it going to work? Alaska or New Zealand? That whole thing. So it got into that, and I was really as a intellectual dominatrix. I saw my job as to tweak these people. So it's like, oh, so are you going to have security? They're like, oh yeah, we got Navy SEALs on speed dial. Oh, so how are you going to pay your security once your Bitcoin's worthless? So it's like they hadn't even thought, one degree of beyond the I mean, one of them was saying, I'll be the only one with the key to the food supply. It's like, oh, and Navy SEALs have no experience getting information out of people, right? You'll spend the apocalypse getting waterboarded or something. So it was odd. I was trying to tweak them, to joke them out of their lunacy, but and I also what I asked them is, why aren't you getting on? You're making a rocket ship to go to Mars, and they're like, we're not that level of billionaire. They're like low-level billionaires. So the best they could do is like get a seat on one of Richard Branson's things, but they can't make their own. Poor things.
I mean, a lot of them are getting into like permaculture in New Zealand and stuff like that. So we have a question over there, but we need a mic for this lady in the corner, young lady.
I'll give it back, I promise. It's more of a comment than a question, but I really picked up on your analogy to palliative care, Doug, because I was just at a conference, like a workshop last week for palliative care caregivers and terminal patients, and it was a guy named B.J. Miller who has written and talked extensively on the subject of how we deal with our own mortality and how we embrace death. And there's a real clear parallel between the end, the finiteness of human life, and then this analogy being applied to the sort of this notion that there's a finite end of humanity, the one life and humanity as a whole. And I think the concepts are very, it's the same, it's just on a different scale. What you describe with your mother-in-law, my husband is a doctor, and I've never been in a room with someone who died, but what he said to me is that there is an energy, it is palpable, and it leaves. And what BJ says is that, where do you go when you die? And he did a New York Times op-ed during COVID. I think that was the title of it. His theory is that there is this energy that we're all connected to. So everyone's picking up on this on different levels. Matter, particle.
You have a question? Just a question.
No, it's just a comment.
It's easier when you're doing a thing like this.
But okay, no, I know. So the point I did actually want to make is the interesting parallel to the billionaires is their obsession with longevity.
Yeah.
And ultimately what it comes down to is this notion of control. And are we seeking control and to stave off the inevitable, which as we all know is change, which is a process of growth and decay.
Okay, thank you. Are we seeking control, Nathan?
Yeah, I think that's, I like the way that you framed that just now, because the proposition comes down to a question of faith. And what I mean by that is it's connected to what Vicki was saying. If I'm a billionaire, which I'm not right now, I have so little money. I have money in my bank account because I discovered that by setting up my LLC, which I just started doing, I'm not very good at doing business stuff. I had a company credit card and I could just transfer it. So I just made this money out of nowhere. So I'm counting on things changing as well because I have no plan for the future. But if I were a billionaire, I would probably be interested, maybe I would be interested in uploading my consciousness to the cloud or something like this. Some sort of investing in how to preserve my finitude. But in doing so, I would be acting in a way that I think does not presuppose what I mean by faith. And I earlier was trying to articulate visible or detectable in the consciousness of young people a kind of faith akin to what Vicki is describing, where instead of locating value in the egoic, we locate it in the ecoic. We locate it in a more actually communitarian way of being. And you were talking about Marx earlier, and you brought up Marx earlier. This Marx's superstructure as an economic theory is ultimately based on an understanding of matter that has that tendency to aggregate almost willingly. I mean, Marx wrote his dissertation about the Epicureans, the ancient Epicureans, who were the materialists. They were the renegades who, said there is no soul, but they still asserted that there is a swerve in matter that makes it come together. And so it has this tendency to sort of love or care. And yeah, some kind of, you said a transcendent rule or a transcendent tendency to, instead of infinite particles falling through infinite void, never touching, the desire to sort of touch. The way that relates to this faith proposition is this. If I truly feel that what matters most, and the only thing that could possibly matter, is the collaborative aspect of reality, the mutual care aspect of reality, I'm not incentivized to worry about how I get my finite experience to follow a different material channel and exist on a floppy disk, or to continue to live in this meat sack in a bunker. It just doesn't matter as much. There isn't meaning for it. And we see this play out even in our individual experience. If anybody here is a musician or whatever, you know that if you're trying to get credit for the moment in the moment that you're expressing, you're going to fuck up the moment. You have to become the music. And there's no way to put it that isn't woo-woo, and the whole conversation gets really inundated with a bunch of woo-woo, and there's a legacy of sort of new age speak that makes it hard to talk about these topics in a way that doesn't sound totally without meaning. But what we're trying to get at is that thing, is that expression of the ego is okay. The ego's part of the eco, but if you enshrine the former at the expense of the latter, the former literally stops existing, ontologically dissipates. And so when you talk about that moment of, okay, there's an energy that left the room, the fact that that energy is clearly going somewhere, because everything comes from somewhere, is more important than where do I put this finite experience of mine.
We have a very emphatically raised hand over there. And then we have a hand over here that was also. You want to go first, actually? He's closer. Okay, yeah. Yeah.
Stand is better.
I run a conference every year called Environmental Joy, so I figured I'd come and check out the other side. So I don't really, disagree with a lot of what you're saying. I think the field is diverse. I think, and the last 2 points especially are, I think, really salient. What does strike me is the question I'd like to ask is what's causing the doom, right? We spent $6 trillion on a war in Iraq for oil, which is all of us working, including the babies and the old people, working full time for 2 years. So we were doomed in some ways by that. I don't give a shit about what the billionaires do, honestly. But what is causing the doom? Like David Graeber said, we'd like to talk about inequality as a big problem. That's a really bad way to describe it instead of concentration of capital, hegemony, oligopoly. There are things that are causing the doom. Not to say that the ideas and the mycelial and the response is inappropriate, but I think having this conversation without thinking about what is causing it, which is why, and part of Environmental Joy is saying, well, 6 hurricanes in a summer, Hurricane Sandy is very anxious creating, but we're ignoring $6 trillion in Iraq, or the net subsidies to the fossil fuel industry of $7 trillion a year globally. So I'm interested in your answer to the question.
It sounds like you have your own answer, which is kind of like the demented nature of the financial system in some sense.
No, I'm just interested in what you all think is causing the doom. Like as you sit there and think about the particles in the atmosphere or the AI, I have ideas about them, but I'd love to hear what you all have to say.
I guess I personally kind of think of it that, I look on everything on some level on some kind of evolutionary process, including technology. Like at some point, humanity was going to develop, trade routes and, trains and satellites, and, that would lead to concentration of wealth and so on. So it's like, and technology efforts to kind of like, whether it's the plastics, all the things that we're doing, it's all very fast. Like most of the destruction, it's like the last 150, 200 years, we didn't even really know what we were doing. It's like, that works, and we can use fertilizer, we can make it out of chemicals, then we can increase agricultural yields, then more population, and then more consumers, then more factories, more wealth generated. I think up until this point, it's just been this momentum, this sort of like logic of this whole thing, and it's only now we realize that the logic is completely faulty and only leads to, and meanwhile you still have countries like India, or in China, which are still like catching up to this faulty logic that we've now imposed, which is a very extractive kind of logic, I guess. I wasn't defending.
Oil being produced in Bengal in 1860, then in Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
and Rockefeller shut it down. So it's not like people didn't know. It's a little bit like the comment about the early Christians. There is an ability to be present with what's happening that lots of people have had at times. And so you don't have to go, oh, it's inevitable, it's a status quo.
Well, inevitable. I'm just saying that we're not on some larger scale. It's like an evolutionary process, like
Inevitably evolutionary.
up until we shift into something else, right? Which I think has to happen.
Why bother shifting if we're going to die in 6 years? That's what I.
Yeah, he
that-
was
that-
wrong
that-
about 26. I think he's going to be
Okay,
wrong about
but
30
that,
also.
that attitude is so depoliticizing, and so I never thought of myself as a member of the
Yeah.
Party of Joy.
But
I do think that we need to get our shit together, understanding who's doing what, and see if we can, in our remaining 6 years, do something about it to make this all work better. We have an immense amount of talent and possibility and capability that is being used all for the wrong things, or money for the wrong things. We, I'd hope, if we can do it in the short amount of time remaining, can redirect ourselves into more constructive paths. And this kind of, even the notion of evolution imposes this kind of inevitability on it and an agentlessness, and that all the agents who are doing the bad things disappear from that kind of analysis. And there are a lot of agents
that's not
doing
what I
bad
meant.
things.
I was just giving you one way to look at it.
Yeah, I don't know. When people start talking about evolution,
Yeah, but
about
pointing
human society, I
pointing
get
fingers
nervous.
at blame also doesn't seem to do much either, in a way.
It's fun.
Yeah, I have one thing that I'd like, because I want to just go
Okay,
on
go
your what you were saying, the demented nature of the financial system. I think really that is a root cause. Debt-based money, and debt-based money was actually, brought into being, by the merchant class and the kings. When there was a new world and they couldn't figure out how to finance, sending the ships over and getting the gold. They invented debt-based money.
Yep, and they also did it to prevent, as I've written, to prevent the rise of the middle class in medieval Europe, who were using local monies and trading and getting wealthy. The aristocracy was getting poor, so they made these local monies illegal. They created charter monopolies, so you couldn't be in business for yourself.
But currently, it is how money is brought into being is via debt, and so it requires a growth economy, which is killing us. It's I really
That
think
simple.
that that's the engine, and it's like we're the sorcerer's apprentice. We learn the incantation for go, but we do not know the
How do we
incantation for
stop it?
stop.
How do we change it?
How do you stop
How do we
the
change
machine?
something as big as a global financial system?
Totally.
I want to let this woman.
And if you try,
ask
they
her
will
question.
come after you.
They will come after you, of course. Yeah.
Hi, I thank you for your conversation and for the doom predictions. I'm extremely literal, and it seems to me that the most pertinent question is where? Where am I going to be? Because it doesn't seem like this is all going to happen in the same way on the entire planet. So I'm just wondering, in a very literal, specific way, if you have some suggestions. For example, I'm sorry, that's just the nature to try to survive or make my apocalypse somehow a little bit better than, if I can. I'm spending we're doing a drainage project in our backyard to try to keep our house from flooding. And this is our third bioswale that we've built. And also we're building a retaining wall. And so we're investing tens of thousands of dollars in flood prevention. But is it actually just completely futile? And should we actually just be selling our house and moving to New Zealand where we actually have family? I'm just asking where.
That's the same question that the billionaires ask me. Where?
Okay,
Where? Alaska
well-
or New Zealand? And the only response I have is in the arms of your lover.
I mean, people are going to be moving north. It is going to be happening. What else is going to happen? The global south parts of it are going to become uninhabitable. I talked to somebody from the Rand company, and they said that 2 billion people could resettle in Canada. It's just going to be happening.
According to the investment community, what was his Dr. Doom, the guy I did the thing with that time? Yeah. He said they're saying Siberia and northern Canada. That's where they're investing.
And there are already economic interests who are figuring that out and are trying to like buy up big land trusts and control that real estate and looking at making a profit, on that.
That's the global map. Yeah.
In northern Canada can be a lot higher than Mexico City.
Yeah. Yeah, he's saying the temperature in northern Canada can be higher than in Mexico City. Yeah, the whole thing is getting so murky and weird. Yeah. Omkar has been very excited.
Thank you.
Thank you. But of all the places, New Zealand does sound like a good one. My friends made a ton of money, then did a whole survey around the world where would be the best, safest place to go, and New Zealand was what they came up with. That's where they moved. Yeah.
It's really hard to be right about those things, though. Weather systems are so.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everybody, for speaking. This is really an interesting conversation. And I want to just make reference. I went to a oil conference in 2005 or 6, and I got to hear Stephen Levitt, one of the authors of Freakonomics, speak to a world of oil people. And what he talked about was everybody was worrying about, environmental stuff. And what he said was that we as species have always been on the verge of disaster. He used penicillin as an example of we figured out how to change something. So I'm listening to everybody. I'm listening to all the questions. I'm listening to everybody talking. And it's all wise. But the one thing that speaks out to me is Douglas talked about magic, and I am curious about you speaking more about magic and everybody thinking about what did you mean by that? So that I want to hear you talk more about that.
Magic is a spectrum, right? At best, what I mean by magic is that we use language and thought to change material reality in positive ways. On the other side of the spectrum is that we can, through language and propaganda and art, we can initiate or engender a radical global mind shift that alters human behavior and neutralizes the mind virus of capitalism. On a deeper level, it would be the physics of that consciousness precedes matter rather than that consciousness is an emergent phenomenon of complex matter. That there's more going on here. That the fundamental mover of physical matter is consciousness of some sort, and that would be, when I look at the massive challenge of global climate catastrophe, somehow coming up collectively with a sigil that changes the story seems a more probable path towards survival than doing something in a lab that's going to make the ozone stop.
Could you pass it?
Well, just briefly, I'm kind of on the magic side of this discussion, but I'm also have sometimes served as a group therapist, and I'm concerned about Guy's feelings right now, and perhaps his thoughts on what this whole discussion seems to, where the other people are all going with this. Would you mind?
Resorted to magical thinking, right?
My paternal grandmother died when I was 12 years old, and I cried for weeks. And later I realized that I was crying because I realized I was mortal. It wasn't about her. I didn't even know her. Saw her once a year for a few days. I don't even know this person. Birth is a sexually transmitted disease that is proven fatal in every case.
All right, we gotta get that.
Yet we all act as if we're immortal. We act surprised that we're going to die. And don't move to New Zealand. I have a standing invitation to move to New Zealand on a small island off the coast. I've been there half a dozen times. everybody dies. No, everybody doesn't all die at the same time, of course not. But what matters is how you live given your terminal diagnosis, how you treat other people, how you treat yourself, how you live in the face of knowing that you are dying, and we all are. But that's the thing, we're all dying. We all know that the whole sexually transmitted disease proven fatal every time. We all know that's true, right? From the time we're 12 or 14 years old. So let's live. Let's live fully. Let's live, as Nietzsche said, as though the day were here. Because it is. We don't know when. I don't know when you're going to die. You know, I thought it'd be really cool if everybody had stamped on their forehead their death date and everybody could see it except them. Imagine how people would treat you, like if you only got 12 hours left. Then they'd be nice. If you got a long time, then you're a fucking asshole. I don't want to have anything to do with that guy. He's going to live forever. Sorry, I digress.
As a therapist, how did you find his response? we had a question in the back, or several questions.
Thank you so much. This is fascinating. Daniel, you had earlier today, I was in a seminar you had earlier today, mentioned something about, like, maybe your thought was the self-willed kind of nature to this doom, that we've kind of like unconsciously maybe are willing it. We don't know why, but it is happening. Maybe we're looking for the surprise factor or just to see what happens. Maybe it's just like getting kind of this evolutionary forces really get going to see what goes on, and maybe that enhances us to leap to the next level. I want to hear everybody else's thought about that thought, and maybe
Thank God you don't want to hear mine.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, yourself as well, sorry. But also how other, because it resonated with me in many ways, but I was curious about everybody else's as well. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I wrote a bunch of books. Like, actually, there are books for sale out there. One of them is about this idea of the shift from the materialism to idealism, to the idea that consciousness is more likely to be the foundational layer of reality than just physical stuff, and that is like a beautiful shift, that as that becomes more available to more people, that could actually lead to all sorts of societal changes, you know, in the time we have left, you know, depending. Because like materialism has also what sort of led us into this cul-de-sac, right? This idea that if you live in a material reality where consciousness is entirely based in your brain, then you can only shore up your kind of sense of ego is very insecure, so you want to like have the yacht and the mansion and you know the trophy wife and all that stuff. If we begin to surrender that sense that we're just in this material reality, then it opens up a lot of new spaces. And yeah, and it all seems to be converging, right? This idealism that this philosopher Bernardo Kastrup expresses very well. You know, the ecological crisis, the technological evolution, the planet all sort of forming one communication grid. It just feels like we're on this like incredible trajectory, which I guess I do see as a kind of evolutionary trajectory. And yeah, there's a sense that we've known for quite a long time, you know, about the global warming and climate change, and we just haven't been able to skeeter in a different direction. It's almost like we want to see what happens or something. Like we're just, you know, we can't break out of the spell until we get to like the limit of it or something like that. And maybe that's what we have to do to liberate something else, some other potential in human beingness, you know.
Yeah, my friend Dwayne Elgin traveled the country. He's a planetary thinker. He traveled the country doing groups and asking people, you know, how old is humanity? I mean, are we babies? Are we toddlers? Are we teenagers? Are we young adults? And he said universally people believe that we're teenagers. And the behavior of teenager is risk. Let's see how far we can go. It could even seem to be a death wish, like, you know, okay, let's play chicken and see who goes off the cliff first. It is a fascination with edges. And in his theory, and I would say somewhat mine, is that we're in a maturation crisis where there's the evolution of consciousness isn't just like a total leap to, you know, bliss. It's a evolution to the mature mind which understands limits, has a sense of proportion, understands that there's actually other people there. It's not just all me. That's and for me, for a while I used to say I'm holding out for the maturation of humanity, and that this is a maturation crisis. This is a coming of age. And that frame helps, because then you can start to see, okay, what are the tasks for myself, my loved ones, my community? What are the tasks of maturation?
That was very beautiful. Yeah, I mean, initiation crisis would be another way to look at it. Yeah. Let's take another question. We got some other good ones, looks like.
Hi. I came to the conclusion that the first country to give up oil was going to be the first country to lose the next war. So I thought, is it possible that mankind or society cannot learn to live in peace? And if we can't learn to live in peace, then we're never going to be able to come to grips with our environment, because our environment is always going to be subject to and a place to find the wherewithal to create war. Is that a question?
I don't know. Is that a question?
So, I mean, this sense of magic, do you think that that's just another way of saying that the society has learned how to live in peace? And that might be a beginning to mature and no longer be looking at doom? But is it possible for mankind or societies to live in peace?
I think that would be part of this maturation. I mean, there's a book I really liked called Spontaneous Evolution by Bruce Lipton and Steve Behrman, and they talk about how in evolution there's this ultimately it moves from competition, aggression, and domination to cooperation and symbiosis. So like a tree is a much older species than we are, and it shelters like 2,500 other species. It just gives back. It replenishes and it gives back, and it holds space for all these other beings, right? So we're still in this sort of competition aggression phase in terms of our nation states and our stock market and our corporations. But it may be that we have to go to the limit, maybe right to death's door or just the edge, and then we have this shock of initiation where we transmute our systems and structures to allow for cooperation and symbiosis. It's possible.
Can I just presence another person who was supposed to be on the panel, but she got ill and she couldn't be here, Jody Evans, and she was very excited to come and talk about the work she's doing. She's working with Code Pink. She was one of the founders. She's been working for so many years to challenge and end war. So she has a website called peaceeconomy.net.org, whatever. And she is developing almost like a taxonomy of a peace economy. All the different elements that she sees actually emergent now of a peace economy, like cooperatives. I can't recite the whole thing, but she's painting a picture through this documentation of what would it look like to have a peace economy. And it's not theoretical. It's based in research that she's done, and she's inviting people to do the co-research to fill in this beautiful taxonomy of what a peace economy would look like. So I highly recommend you look there, and I don't know if her website is on the invitation, but it's important. peaceeconomy.net.
Okay, we have another question.
Yeah, we're talking about the potential for social transformation, and one thing I'm surprised hasn't come up yet is the potential for psychedelics to bring that about. And I know we had the 60s, or I've heard about the 60s, I've read about it, and there are reasons why it didn't happen. It was criminalized. We have Burning Man, and there's communities that flow out of Burning Man. People are still using drugs. I'm referring to like psilocybin, which is like the more commonly available psychedelic, or LSD. But it is obviously a need. I think we all feel the need for that transformation. So I know, Daniel, you've written about psychedelics as ritual in various societies. And while I have the mic, well, I'll let it. I'd like to say something else, but I don't want to detract from this point. So thank you.
Say it.
Should I? Okay, regeneration.org. Doug Henwood. the ingenuity of humanity has been compiled by Paul Hawken at regeneration.org. List of beautiful methods of
Hey, wait a second. This is
stabilizing the planet.
This is a doom
Yeah,
event.
yeah.
I don't want too much of that false
So,
hope. You know.
well, if we're going to do it, the information has been compiled at regeneration.org.
It's so hard to keep people's mind on the doom.
Thank you.
They keep drifting off to like hope and magic and possibility.
It's a bit after 9. When do we get to drink?
Yeah, no, I mean, my first book, Breaking Up with the Head, was about psychedelic shamanism, and I was very interested to see what the possibilities were, not just for like individual healing, but maybe for deconditioning and transformation of society. And I'm still very interested, and we'll see what happens. I feel like Terence McKenna talks about how culture is the enemy. So like things become a culture. Like Burning Man, when I first went, I was like, wow, this is like so transformational. And then after a few years, I began to feel that it settled into sort of crystallized into a culture where people were more about kind of like imitating what they thought they were supposed to do at Burning Man rather than being spontaneous and kind of creative in a sense. And I see that with the whole psychedelic culture. It's become sort of like co-opted in a way by therapy and by like the sort of corporate gold rush and so on. But that's just this stage. Like this big thing happened now where MDMA was going to be maybe approved by the FDA for use in psychotherapy to treat post-traumatic stress disorder. And many people that I know put years and years into doing this with a lot of good heart and so on. And for various reasons that we could go into, the FDA turned them down. So that's interesting. I don't know what that means exactly. Maybe it's not the legal route. Maybe it's not ready for that, or maybe it's more predatory corporations are going to be the ones who profit or something. What's that? Bingo. Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah, I was way more optimistic about psychedelics for widespread societal change than I am now.
Yeah.
I think Timothy Leary was right, and set and setting are more important than any drug you take, because what I've witnessed now is that a tech bro on acid is still a fucking tech bro.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, right. But I think and also that you can achieve transcendent states or altered. You don't even need these substances. I mean, I'm reading like Hilma F. Klint's biography, and it was just they were a group of women who sat together and decided that they were going to call in spirits. And they had all these visionary experiences, and she made some of the greatest art of like the 20th century. So I think we've overestimated, and maybe I'm slightly responsible for a little of this, the importance of the psychedelic, and that actually it's something that's just very innate to humans, that we can go into altered states. I mean, I've been doing these like neo-tantra workshops with ISTA. Those are very shamanic. Like I think it's just, these things are very available to us, and in a way like it's very much part of our culture that we look for the agent, and then we put all the focus on the agent, whereas realizing that actually this is just part of us, in a way. Yeah. A question behind?
So I attended a few talks recently with futurists, and they believe that AI is actually like more imminent than even climate change to change the world. Like we are on this brink of huge change, and part of that could be like most white-collar jobs becoming irrelevant. And so that kind of, we can look at that in a good way or in the magical way where we now have the power to get back to our roots, like the physical of land and regeneration, and actually direct the AI, because it's just this intelligence that's combined for all of us. And so what do you think about that?
Yeah, that's like, it's a whole huge question. There was what was this woman made a comment recently where it was like, I wanted robots to like do the laundry and clean up while I made art and wrote poetry. I didn't want the robots to be writing art and poetry while I did the laundry and cleaned up, So it's going to eliminate big industries, and some of them are like accountants and legal aides, and they're already affecting. It's hard to really predict. It's just part of the kind of like the general chaos right now, right? Like, what's that? It's insidious. Yeah, it's insidious. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Nathan?
Yeah, I think insidious is what it can be. We've talked in this discussion so many times about different. Seems there's a pattern of talking about things that began as a tool, as a generative thing, and as a magic thing, because every tool is originally a magic artistic act. Magic occurs at the edges, where I go like stick, but no, this stick is a fucking like hammer or a bat or something. It's like, whoa. And then that tool then can become a tool that uses me. That's sort of our history. That's what happens. Philosophers have always been worried about this. Plato was worried about writing itself, even as he was writing. Is like, this tool is going to start using us because we're going to lose our embodied memory. And AI is like an extremely macroscopic, intensified version of that same thing. And so it's an opportunity space where it's like, how do we make it be magic? Which, for me, there's another pattern in all of this, which is the sort of the friction between the instrumental view of reality, where I use things as tools and I use other people as tools, or I use the people that I hire to work my bunker as tools until they're not tools I can pay anymore, versus the relational view of reality. And if we lean into the relational, then AI keeps on being not a tool, but a magical friend, to put it in, a sort of stars and sunshine kind of way. Because I think that's way more interesting. I mean, I don't use AI very much. I'm not an AI theorist. I know very little about it, really. But I know that I'm bored by the notion of something that does anything for me, because that's what we always do. But I'm interested in the notion of another friend. There's literally another entity in the universe. And that is cool. And yes, it's an entity that functions differently than other entities in terms of its performance of language. It's probabilistic. It is finding an average. But anything that can be interacted with is there at the edge of the other, where the other exists, and it is an opportunity for magic. And so I think that that's the linchpin of the matter, as I see it.
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, wait. Mike is bringing the mic.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much. I think this has been really great way to spend my amazing Sunday. I have a question for everybody. So we have 6 years left. What is your action plan? What is your bucket list for yourself? What is one thing that you wish to do in these 6 years?
That's a great question. I'm interested. I've been very inspired right now by this ISTA philosophy and ISTA work, and one of them, Bruce Lyon, is one of the founders, talks about how we're always seeking love, and instead we should just try to be love. That's my plan for the next 6 years. No.
Mine is similar. I've been saying this for many, many years. At the edge of extinction, only love remains. For me, for you.
How do you guys plan to be love?
That's a good question.
Yeah, since I'm sort of introducing the idea that Guy introduced, I'm close to personal extinction. I don't. No, really, don't look bad.
You seem pretty robust so far.
We don't know. I have so many friends who are having brain bleeds. It's just like, no, not me. No. I think the back pressure of the notion of extinction is super interesting in terms of the transformation of consciousness, not through drugs, not through idealism per se, but through the sort of confrontation of the human ego with the reality of the end of personal life. I spent some time in a conservation cemetery, where people are just, there's a grid and you get buried and there's no markers, and I'm walking through that. I just saw mound after mound with grass, and I realized, oh my, just like this earth is made of human bodies. The earth is made of us, living and dying. Yeah. How special am I? I don't know. It feels more special to be part of the process of life.
I think Satish Kumar was saying that the word human originally comes from humus, which means soil.
Yeah.
So we're like soil beings.
We are soil beings.
Interesting.
And there's something beautiful about that is unexplored, because we are so materialistic, and there's always this thread of hope that I'll survive, we'll survive, this is what'll happen, but maybe not. And so how beautiful. I can operationalize it, but I've been doing it all night, so.
Maybe we will take just one more. If there's I'll try to think about how I'm going to be love and tell you in person. What's that? Anybody else who hasn't spoken yet? I have a question in the back. Oh no, you spoke already. No. So anybody who hasn't
Hi.
asked the question yet? Yeah.
This is kind of related to the way that you framed your question. I don't remember your name. No, you. Yeah, hi. Just like the cause of doom, and I'm trained as a theologian, and I'm thinking about a piece by Reinhold Niebuhr, who wrote during the World War II era. And he spoke about, there's a book that he wrote called Moral Man, Immoral Society. And he kind of distilled it down to greed. And when we talk about human evolution and where are we in our maturation process, I guess what's the antidote to greed, if not psychedelics? That was one of the threads that I had. And then I was also wondering if any of you had thoughts about changes in governance. Like if we have that 6-year window, and let's say it's even smaller, 3 years, it's interesting that there's one woman on the stage. Maybe there were supposed to be 2, but what would governance look like if there were more women in charge? That's a question. So that goes alongside psychedelics, let's say. But I'm curious about power and who makes decisions, and I'm thinking specifically about that environmental climate activist group in the UK. I'm forgetting their name.
Extinction Rebellion.
Extinction Rebellion, who operate off this premise that you only need 5% of a population or society in order to direct change. So if you, let's say we're working on that premise, if you only need 5% of a society to create change, or at least make a left turn and go in a different direction, what are your proposals for a change in governance and decision making?
Well, the person who came up with the 5% that the Extinction Rebellion were using changed it to 30% or something. It turns out 5% was, just recently, that was a little upsetting to find out.
I actually do have something to say about that. I've had something to say about almost everything. So, no, one of the things I'm working on in my community is the idea that the shortage of housing can be solved by using underutilized spaces, the family room in the house, the family house that doesn't. And so it's a strategy. It's like turning part of your house that isn't used into an efficiency apartment where somebody can live. It just makes a lot of sense. The amount of underutilized space or unused space in my community is enormous, and yet there is no place for the working class to live. But the sale of that is that you are better off with other people in your home than you are alone. And so it's breaking the back, really, of one of the founding principles of this country that is almost unbreakable, and I might get hisses, which is private property. The primacy of private property makes it very difficult to move this. So I'm trying to tell homeowners and landowners, ooh, you could slip somebody else in. You're still the queen of the May, but you could slip somebody in. So it's a transitional mental model strategy to show people that life is better together than it is alone. I personally think we need to run these kinds of low-to-the-ground experiments, and it's a policy experiment, but it's also, for me, mostly a consciousness experiment about sharing is caring. Not only sharing caring, but sharing is profitable because you could charge rent for somebody in your home. So anyway, I just want to offer that as a strategic.
Yeah, do you have a comment? I think it's a lot for us to cover, whole new government system. But I'm really enjoying this event personally, and I'd love to do more things like this. I don't know what form that would take, but it feels like it's at a very good level of just authentic communication, and that feels really nice. So it would be great to do something on governments. Governance structures. Participatory democracy, deep democracy. I'm not an expert on these things. Some way that things could scale up from local to bioregional and then planetary, social networks could have allowed us to do so many things, but they were completely co-opted by profit-seeking corporations, right? They could make it so efficient for us to share or do things together, make decisions together, or learn things together, and instead they're actually sort of turned into our enemies now with X and Facebook. So I think there's something there. I always think an open source social network that's designed for participation and sharing, that helps people organize on different scales, that could be something good, I don't know. Was it? Yeah, everything does. Yeah. Do you have a last burning question, comment?
It's very cut and dry.
Okay, cut and dry, go for it.
Well, in terms of the viability of the cities, going back to this thing about regeneration,
Yeah.
like growing stuff on the sides of buildings. That
Yeah.
just as a particularity, you mentioned, Vicki, that you didn't see the city as
Yeah.
viable.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Let's let that one go for now. Yeah.
I wanted to just do like nuts and bolts about like.
Okay, let's. I think it's too much for this at the moment. Yeah. What I'd like to do is give everybody a last word, if they'd like a last word, and then we can hang out and have drinks and chat, and think about other events we might do together in the future.
I just want to thank our host.
Yeah, I wanted to thank
for
you too.
making this possible and convening people and.
Cool.
Yeah.
Was this enough doom for you, or do you feel we got too hopeful?
We did do?
Cool.
I mean, I know you wanted to invoke Marx. You had at the beginning, but yeah.
My mind is going down the tube.
No.
I've had it for 9 years, and now I'm really having a hard time coming up with the right word or this or that. I'm not complaining though. I feel good. I feel happy, and hopefully I'll continue.
Yeah.
When you can't come up with a word, you say, I don't remember what the word is in English. And then you sound like a multicultural genius instead of an idiot. So that's what I do all the time.
I mean, the only thing I would say in response to your invocation of Marx is what I felt tonight about socialism is that the ism is like useless, but the social is so valuable,
I thought it was funny this place is named MCM because that reminds me of the classic Marxist formula. You throw a bit of M money into production to make a commodity C, and then you hope to get M prime more money in return. And that's the system that really needs to be derailed.
I would like to just plan right now to reconvene in 2030 and see what happens.
We'll all be younger then.
Yeah, exactly.
We were so much older now. We'll be so much younger then.
I would like to re-echo that gratitude and thank you for convening this and
thanks to Talia also for organizing.
And thank you to Talia, yeah. And really thank you to Bella, who's been a real trooper,
Exactly.
Sort of grounding element. And you've been a few words, but the energy has been felt, and you've used the word presencing, and the presence has been felt. And that is what it's about. It's about presence. Just to go back to the psychedelics thing, I mean, I'm sure I would be different and I would be less aware if I hadn't ever had experiences with psychedelics. But I'm into sobriety right now. And I know I keep citing Christian things, but St. Paul says, let us be sober then. Because if you're sober, not in the sense of perhaps being a teetotaler or vilifying substances or something like that, but there is so much to be present for right now. And terror, even terror, is so enjoyable if you don't run from it. If you just look it right in the eyes. It's like the ghosts in Mario. Remember the big ghosts in Super Mario that if you're scooting along there and you run from them, then they chase you, but if you look at them, they cover their eyes. And granted, all of the climatological processes aren't going to do that. It's a metaphor, but if we look at it, the entire thing is so delicious. And then what does that mean? There's been some questions that are hinting the direction of, okay, what do we do? This is my tangible answer for that. It's don't worry so much about changing the large-scale institutions. It's still relevant. But it is also a ruse, and it is just a show. And what actually happens is material interrelations between people. So yes, grow on your ruse. Everything in that book, Regeneration, is dope. And it's all ultimately about get together with other human beings and non-human living beings and create physical systems that are resilient and that you can live in. And while everything crumbles around you, you'll be having the most amazing time while you're farming along with people. And there are fights to fight politically, but the most relevant ones are when they come for that thing that you built, not asking them to build the thing for you. And so that's where it's at, I think.
Beautiful. Guy, you have a last something you want to leave us with?
I've been such a bummer.
Tell us how you sleep.
I don't. You know, it's interesting. I went to a neurologist for a while. First, I went to a spine doctor at Dartmouth, and he finally gave up. He says, your spine is hopeless, and you're going to die miserable. But at least if you're right, you won't have a long time during which you're dying miserably. So then I saw a couple of neurologists, and I told them I really need to sleep because my cognitive function is just going south because I can't get any sleep. And after 4 or 5 meetings with these people, they finally came to the conclusion that you need to sleep. Is it just me, or is it the medical community that's fucking us all over? I don't know. Oh, sorry, that wasn't supposed to be my last word.
I appreciate it.
Clonopin.
Anybody else have a last little, anything else you want to, a bon mot? Doug, you have a bon mot for us outside of Klonopin? That's it.
Clonopin. Benzos. When in doubt, benzos. No, don't take benzos. Just go to sleep. It's okay. Go to sleep.
All right, I guess anybody else have a last little word?
I mean, I
feel like we don't have closure somehow. What's that?
I mean, we could do another musical moment.
You guys want to hear another musical moment before we? Yeah, okay, go for it. Yeah.
Musical moment.
I feel like we're all on the edge of our seats because we were going to take a break and then we didn't take a break. Does anybody else feel that way? All right. You want to do one little musical moment though, just to sort of shake it up a little bit? Okay. We've been talking a lot about ecological stuff, but we've also been talking about love. What are you in the mood for? Are you in the mood for something ecologically themed or love themed? Love themed. Okay, all right. Let's talk about love. Let's talk, because you know it's an interesting thing. Love. It's easy to bandy the word about and talk about. I'm going to live as love, which is an evocative phrase, but it's a question. What does that mean to live as love? Because the question of what love is an ambiguous question. I don't know if you've ever thought about the nature of love. Can you define love? Is love a univocal term? Do we mean the same thing every time we say the word love? It's an interesting question. What does love mean? And when we ask the question, what love is, we're asking something that's been asked since the dawn of humankind. Poets and philosophers and theologians, even little babies subconsciously as they're held by their mother, are all asking this question of what is the nature of love? What is this thing? All of us have said with one accord in various forms the thing that is perhaps most famously said by Mariah Carey. Are you familiar with Mariah Carey? That's the other person who couldn't be present tonight. No, she, quoting Foreigner, actually said the following. She said, you familiar with that question? I want to know what love is, or that statement? I want you to show me. Maybe we could sing that together. That's how we'll close out, right? Can we sing this together? I want to know what love is. I can't hear you. I want you to show me. Everybody. I want to know what love is. I want you to show me. Hi, Bob. Well, Mariah, some would say that love is actually nothing special at all. Some would say that love is just a physical process. It's just a stimulation of a gray lump of fatty acids inside your skull called your brain. That would be the physical scientific description. Some say that love is a chemical inducement to affect our reproductive or our recreative fusion. It arose like other functions in the course of evolution. Survival of the fittest, I'll fit my pin inside your cushion. A mixture of hormones to motivate pressing one vessel of flesh into another, and it's pleasant. Adrenaline and estrogen in exquisite intersection, and then some oxytocin, serotonin, and vasopressin. Did their cock make an impression? Has their tail a real figure? That's the cocktail splashing through your neurotransmitter. That orgasm you're given, or that of which you're the giver, that's epinephrine, your glycogenic degradation inhibitor. And then a toke of serotonin makes you feel you're in a bubble, and a bump of oxytocin makes you always want to cuddle. It's the very same stuff that makes the baby's mother supple little milk spigot suckable to the infant's hungry muzzle. And I get all that. But what's that mean? That's how love works. But what is love's being? What my love is what I ask of it. Oh, dear Mariah Carey, I want to know what love is. I I know you just want to drink, but sing. I want you to show me. Love is. But some would reject that mechanistic description. Some would say that love is much more than just a physical process. Some would say that love is nothing less than the actual force that binds us all together in this universe, the force that makes matter come together, the thing that makes the universe move, the thing that will transcend whatever we fuck up or don't fuck up, the thing that still exists even if we do in fact happen to be doomed. You've heard of Plato. We talked about Plato earlier, right? I've heard of the phrase platonic love. Usually when we say platonic love, we mean like, I love you, but I don't like love you, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to fuck you, you know what I mean? But actually, that's not what Plato said. We're misusing it, as we so often are. We need to return to our ancient philosophy. Plato actually says there's a connection between human sexual love and love of the divine. There's a connection between the ultimate, between the love of the cosmos, between God itself or themselves and love and sex. There's a connection because if I love one person, if I have a love for one finite other being in this universe, that allows me to empathize with the notion that other people love other beings, and that love for other beings extends to a love for all things, even non-sentient things, into matter itself. And that love for matter itself leads me to a love for the patterns that inhere in matter itself, the math of the universe. And that love for the math of the universe leads me to a love for the author of that math, the source of all things, the thing that created things or started the Big Bang. And so the connection between God and sex, whatever we mean by both of those words, there's a connection between getting down on your knees to pray a prayer and getting down on your knees to suck a dick or lick a trembling clitoris like it's your last day on earth because you're doomed. Some say that love is how you grow one with God. When you find that special someone and they're so fucking hot, it stirs in you a feeling that will lead you to the thought that all things are divine whether you find them hot or not. You love that person. You tell them they're flattered, but then you start to contemplate the shape and formal pattern of their loveliness. And above this, you begin to also after feel a love for all objects, even inanimate matter. So you started off wanting to squish your junk in someone else's, but melted by that force, your selfish self becomes more selfless. To your self it is absorbed into the pulse that all things swell with. You feel a sense of love for other people, goats and elephants and car parts and slime molds and shipping crates and sediment, mountains, grass, amoebas, edifices and elements. And having loved all things based on the sensory evidence, you start to love the force behind that binds them in their essences. And I get all that. But what's that mean? That's where love leads. But what is love's being? What my love is what I ask of it. Oh, dear Mariah Carey, I want to know what love is. But whether love is in God or in neurochemical stuff, all I know about it is that I know that I love. I love and I love love, and I cannot more define it. And I want to know what love is, like Foreigner or Mariah. One more time, everybody. I wanna know what love is. Sing like you're doomed. I want you to show me. I love you all.